If you've come here to learn how to 3D model with nodes inside of Cinema 4D, specifically the Inset node, we're going to break down all the settings for it. I've often heard people say that 3D modeling with nodes is too difficult, but it's like learning anything else, like for example, woodworking. You need a coach or a teacher that will teach you how a miter saw works, how a table saw works, before expecting you to create a table. We break things step by step so that anyone can follow along, whether if you're a beginner, intermediate, or advanced. And if you have any questions, please feel welcome to leave them in the comments below. I'm happy to help you. Here we are inside of Cinema 4D. You can see the nodes that we've already covered thus far, and now we're getting to the Inset node. And this is our example project of what we are creating, but we're actually going to create this ourselves and go through all of what you need to know for the Inset. So let's step over to our project over here. This is where we left off before in this course on 3D modeling with nodes. So what we're going to need is the Inset node. You can either find this in your nodes folder or just type it in here as I had done, which sometimes is the easiest way to move forward. I'm going to drag and drop this in here, although it also would work as a capsule instead of as a node. So you can work with it with models inside of here, like this cube, and it'll inset. But right now we're going to talk about nodes, and then we'll break down in the future capsules. So what we want to inset is the remainder of our split. So let's go ahead and show what that is. That's this section here, the wooden section. We want to inset this so that it looks nice as a wooden countertop. So we're going to connect the remainder to the geometry, and that'll allow the Inset node to affect it, but we won't see anything until we connect our geometry from the Inset to our output geometry. Now you can begin to see things are being inset. So that's a good start. We'll also need to extrude this, but first we need to inset it before extruding. Let's get into all the settings here for this part of the model. So right now we're just working on the wooden part of the countertop. And let's walk through the settings so that regardless of what you're 3D modeling with this tool, you can do it. Up here you'll see your selection string. It's like the other nodes we've covered in the past, so you should be knowing it pretty well. And our options, we can turn on polygon indexes and point indexes. And if I click on the nodes mesh, you'll see those listed, polygons in red and points in blue. Now if you want to put in a specific string, you can set in numbers here, like 0, 1, space, comma 2, just put commas between the numbers so that they are read properly. When it's set to default, it'll actually just take the active selection from whatever was before. So when we split this, our remainder, when we plug the remainder into here, we're saying this remainder is our active selection. So when we use the default, we're using our active selection, which is the remainder of our model. So you can see everything here is being split. Now we could say that perhaps we don't want to split everything. Maybe we don't, perhaps we don't want to inset everything. We just want to inset the sides and not the bottom. And in that case, if you want to do that, you just need to take a look at what sides do I want to do? 0, 1, 2, and 3. So let's try that. 0, 1, 2, and 3. Now we should have everything selected except for 4 on the bottom. And if we connect this to our geometry, you'll see everything is inset except for the bottom. So that's perfect because we really don't need extra polygons there now, do we? So right now we have proportional set. And when you have proportional set for your inset, you'll get this as a percentage. It'll be proportional to the space in which is physically possible to inset this at. So 0%, 100%. You get the main gist. You can choose whatever amount you think looks nice really here. If you turn off this proportional, you'll get numbers here, and you can choose an actual amount, but see, it's no longer keeping us from going too far. You don't want intersecting polygons. But if you go in here and you say, oh, I just want this to be inset 5 centimeters or something like that, then you can see you get that. I'm going to choose proportional for right now, and let's say 20 is good. The inset variation will vary the amount it's being inset per side. So let's see what happens if we increase that. So if I zoom in close here, you can see that these are being inset different amounts. So if you'd like variation in whatever you're 3D modeling, that's how you would do it. I'm going to set that back to the default of 0 by right-clicking on this left arrow. Now we have this other option, subdivision, and this is kind of cool here because it affects your per step and your create n-gons, and we'll get all into that in a moment, but I think you can create some really cool effects with it. So let's go ahead and show what that actually looks like. So for our cabinet, and remember, you don't have to 3D model things the way that I am. You can do your own creative thing that's different. I mean, explore the buttons, do whatever you want to do. But right here, I'm going to show you the subdivision. So let's increase that. So right now we're subdividing it, right? We subdivided it twice, so now you can see what that does is it just creates that subdivision along the inset. And you can really adjust that subdivision number. Now, if you choose per step, instead what it's doing here is it is repeating this inset of 20% again 2 more times. So you'll see when I decrease the subdivision to 1, and then I increase it again to 2, you can see that's just insetting it further the same amount, repeating that pattern. So you can get some really cool effects in here. And remember, if you are animating, that this is keyframeable. So you can animate your models, changing shape, forming, and all kinds of crazy things. So just keep that in mind for your own creative purposes. Even though today we're focusing on 3D modeling a countertop, you're not limited to that is my main point here. And I find that super duper exciting myself. Now we also have this create n-gons option. So what is that? Let's turn that on. So you'll notice something really interesting, and you can visualize this actually better here now that I have our vertices being counted. So you'll notice that we still have our vertices here. Even when we have turn n-gons on, those don't disappear. Do you see how there's points here along where we subdivided? It's just turning that into an n-gon. Now, most of the time, I like to avoid n-gons, but maybe you have a reason why you need this. I am not totally sure what that is. If you are using this tool and you found a situation to use it in, I'm really curious what you're using it for. I'm sure that you can use it for something interesting. Just for my traditionally trained brain that was taught to avoid n-gons, to see them here in this circumstance, I'm not sure their purpose, but I'd love to know if you found one for them, because I feel like there is one out there that I just haven't found yet, because it's a tool in here. So you can see that you still have points along here, and this is just an n-gon with multiple sides. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, like 10-ish sides. So that's quite a bit. I'm going to turn off the create n-gons here for a moment. I want to talk about this use islands, but I want to talk about this with a different example because we're also going to talk about the max angle. Okay, so let's go over to my example file over here. You can see here I have this tube. It's a geomesh. You can find it under your nodes in your geomesh. Here's your tube. You can drag and drop that in there if you want to see the same thing. And then I just turned on this slice so that we're slicing the tube in half. And then I connected that to an inset, but just so that you can visualize what the tube looked like before I inset it. So this is it not inset. So that's our topology here, just with it as it is. And then we add in the inset and we connect that to the geometry output. Okay, and now you can see we're getting something a little bit different here. And let's talk about these settings and what's going on here, because I find this really interesting. So we have our use islands, and if we turn this off, you'll see that it's insetting each polygon. If you choose use islands, it's finding the overall surface and changing how that's inset. So it's looking for curves and straight edges to determine what's an island. So we're thinking about degrees of differentiation between this. So if we start adjusting this max angle, that's determining at what angle is this considered an island versus at what angle is it not considered an island. So you can see how that's changing here. And I just find that very interesting because it's like a geometry puzzle for your brain. And when I figured that out, reading and exploring the buttons, I just thought that was so fascinating that they added that in here. So I want to share it with all of you. And you might find it really useful for a project. If you're 3D modeling something that's curved, this is going to come in super handy. Now let's go back over to our countertop here, the one that we're 3D modeling. For this case, we probably need something pretty minimal. We don't need these subdivisions in here. We're 3D modeling something pretty simple as our first project. And I can turn off this per step, and we are ready to go on to the next step of 3D modeling this countertop. Now you are an expert in the Inset node. If you'd like to continue on and learn about the Select node, hit this link up here, and I'll see you there.